My name is Zara Evelyn, and the instant I understood that my boss, Cornelius Thatcher, had been intentionally dismantling my career to conceal his own theft, something inside me went cold and precise. It was exactly 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when he dropped a heavy manila folder onto my desk, wearing that familiar smug smile, and told me I had until Monday morning to finish what was clearly a 3-month market analysis. The way his wife, Olivia, stood inside the conference room watching through the glass wall should have warned me. Her gaze didn't flicker. It tracked me, assessing, calculating. But I was too busy staring at the impossible scope of the assignment, already measuring the certainty of failure, to understand that failure was the entire objective. Cornelius had perfected this tactic: assign the unachievable, let the employee exhaust themselves trying, then use the collapse as neat legal justification for termination. Efficient, bloodless. What I didn't yet know was that he had used this exact maneuver on 7 other employees over the previous 2 years. Each dismissal came just days after large client payments vanished from company accounts. Before I explain how I turned his carefully built trap into his complete undoing, take a moment and tell me what you would have done in my position, because what I'm about to share reshaped everything I thought I knew about justice. Desperation, I learned, can be refined into something devastatingly elegant. Please like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Stories like this don't happen often, and what comes next is something you won't forget. That Friday night, alone under the harsh fluorescent lights of the office, staring at requirements that would normally occupy an entire department for months, I felt the familiar pressure settle in. Cornelius's past assignments replayed in my head, each one engineered to break me. Reassigned projects, disappearing work, deadlines designed to humiliate. But something was different this time. The panic that used to grip me was gone. In its place was an unsettling calm. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was finally seeing the pattern clearly. Instead of opening spreadsheets, I started asking questions. Why this project? Why now? And why was Olivia, hired as HR director only 3 weeks earlier, suddenly so fixated on my performance metrics? I spent that weekend not crunching numbers, but examining the company's financial behavior. What I uncovered in those first hours was staggering. Cornelius Thatcher wasn't sloppy, he was meticulous. Large payments would arrive, briefly settle in the main account, then quietly move to a secondary account he controlled. Delays would be manufactured, blame would be assigned, employees would be terminated before anyone could connect the missing money. They left believing they had failed, never realizing they were cover stories for embezzlement. By Saturday morning, I had built a complete timeline. Jennifer Ashworth, terminated 6 months earlier, 1 day after the $230,000 Morrison payment moved. Bradley Quinton, dismissed within 24 hours of the $185,000 Henderson transfer. 7 employees, 7 payments, nearly $2 million siphoned away. By Saturday evening, the truth was undeniable. I wasn't being set up to fail a market analysis. I was being positioned as scapegoat number 8, timed perfectly to cover the next incoming payment. That realization changed everything. I stopped trying to complete the impossible assignment and instead decided to give Cornelius exactly what he had asked for: a comprehensive analysis, just not the one he expected. Sunday became the most focused day of my career as I built a presentation that masqueraded as an efficiency review while mapping every stolen dollar, every termination, and every falsified record. I structured it using his preferred format, the same format he demanded for Monday's executive meeting, fully recorded and archived. He wanted witnesses to my failure. Instead, he was about to give himself an audience for his own destruction. Monday arrived with a sharp, unnatural calm. I walked into the building carrying my laptop bag, fully aware of the consequences that would follow. The conference room was already full. Executives, department heads, and at the head of the table, Cornelius and Olivia Thatcher. Suddenly, her presence made perfect sense. She wasn't just his wife, she was his safeguard, the HR director who could rewrite evaluations, adjust records, and ensure terminated employees left quietly. "Zara," Cornelius said with practiced concern, "I hope you've prepared something substantial. We have serious decisions to make about efficiency." The threat was clear. Present your failure, accept your exit. I connected my laptop and the title slide appeared. Maximizing profit margins through strategic fraud elimination, a comprehensive financial analysis. The shift in the room was immediate. Confusion gave way to alarm. I began calmly, explaining that I had conducted a detailed review of financial inefficiencies that had cost the company nearly $2 million over 24 months. The first slide displayed a timeline aligning major client payments with employee terminations, dates, amounts, transfer records. Cornelius's face drained of color as he realized his insistence on a public, recorded presentation had sealed his fate. I advanced through slide after slide, detailing the improbability of the pattern, the hidden account numbers, the altered performance reviews, and the psychological manipulation used to condition employees into believing they had failed. Olivia tried to interrupt, citing protocol, but the CEO silenced her, his attention fixed on the evidence. Cornelius glanced repeatedly at the recording equipment, knowing every second was becoming permanent proof. The final section revealed his ultimate plan, the Meridian Industries contract, $4.7 million scheduled to arrive Tuesday morning. I was meant to take the blame, be fired, and disappear from the equation while he vanished with enough money to retire. Instead, he sat exposed, watching his entire operation unravel in real time. I ended by outlining the true financial impact: stolen funds, legal exposure, criminal liability, and reputational damage. My recommendation, I said evenly, is immediate fraud prevention protocols, a forensic audit, and cooperation with law enforcement. The silence afterwards was absolute. Then the CEO spoke, ordering Cornelius and Olivia to remain while legal was contacted. And that's when Cornelius made his final mistake. Instead of staying quiet, he doubled down. He accused me of fabrication, of incompetence, of falsifying documents. I responded calmly, lifting my phone. "Everything I presented came from your own systems. I documented every access point, every timestamp, every file path. Would you like me to walk through them?" Olivia finally spoke, desperation sharpening her voice. "This presentation violates confidentiality protocol. Zara accessed sensitive financial data without authorization." "Authorization that was explicitly granted when Cornelius assigned me to analyze company efficiency," I answered smoothly, adding that he'd insisted I use any resources necessary to complete his impossible assignment. His own words now formed the legal foundation of my case, and the irony was not lost on anyone in the room. He had handed me the keys to uncover his crimes and then demanded I present them publicly. CFO Patricia Wyndham leaned forward, her expression hard. "Cornelius, I need immediate access to the secondary account referenced in this presentation." "I don't know what account she's talking about," he lied, his voice cracking. "Account number 8412936577 at Hartwell Regional Bank," I recited from memory, "opened 18 months ago using your social security number and personal identification. Current balance approximately $1.8 million as of Friday's transfers." The room erupted into controlled chaos as urgent calls went out to legal, forensic accountants, law enforcement, and the board. Everyone suddenly had somewhere to be, except Cornelius and Olivia, who sat frozen like specimens under glass. The most satisfying moment came when Patricia ended her call and looked directly at him. "The account has been frozen pending investigation."
Bank security footage shows you making deposits that align exactly with the dates in Zara's presentation. That was when Cornelius finally grasped the full scope of his destruction. Not just the theft, but the conspiracy he'd built with his wife, the 7 careers he'd ruined, the millions in lawsuits ahead, and the criminal charges that would shadow him for life. Olivia made one last desperate attempt, claiming it was all a setup and that I'd been planning the attack for months with former employees. But I calmly opened another file and displayed emails between Cornelius and Olivia from before her official hire. outlining their plan to systematically remove senior staff and replace them with her relatives and friends. My termination, I explained, was meant to clear the way for Olia's sister, Genevieve, to take my role, continuing a pattern repeated across departments. 7 terminated employees, I concluded, 7 new hires, all personally connected to Olia. The nepotism alone warranted investigation, but combined with the embezzlement, it revealed a picture of comprehensive corporate fraud. Harrison Blackthorne stood up, his decision unmistakably final. Security, please escort Cornelius and Olia to separate offices. They are not to communicate with each other or access any company systems. Legal will coordinate with law enforcement regarding the formal arrest process. As security moved in, something in Cornelius shifted, the frantic denial evaporating and giving way to a cold, focused rage aimed squarely at me. You think you're clever, don't you? You have no idea what you've done. There are consequences for interfering in business that doesn't concern you, Cornelius snapped. But Harrison cut in sharply, warning him to stop talking. Cornelius was already past reason. She's destroyed everything, he ranted. 2 years of careful planning, millions in secured funds, a perfect system that hurt nobody. Nobody. I stood then, my voice carrying 2 years of bottled fury. Jennifer Ashworth suffered a nervous breakdown after you fired her, I said. She believed she was incompetent, that she'd failed at everything. Broadley Quinton is still unemployed because you destroyed his professional reputation. 7 people absorbed the failure you manufactured, believing they weren't good enough, when their only mistake was standing in your way when you needed scapegoats. That truth struck him harder than any legal consequence ever could. For 2 years, he'd convinced himself his victims deserved what happened, that he was simply a superior strategist, outmaneuvering weaker players. Confronting the reality that he'd destroyed innocent lives for money was something he'd never allowed himself to face. As security escorted them out, Olia shot me a look of pure hatred. This isn't over. Yes, I replied evenly, it absolutely is. The conference room cleared, leaving only Harrison, Patricia, and me. Damage control, legal strategy, and a full audit awaited them. But before plunging into crisis mode, Harrison looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from senior leadership before. Respect, Zara. What you did today saved this company from total financial collapse. The Meridian payment alone would have bankrupted us once the fraud surfaced. Your weekend work prevented catastrophe. There's more, I said quietly. The secondary account wasn't Cornelius's only hiding place. I uncovered offshore accounts, shell companies, and a network that extended far beyond our organization. This was never going to stop at 7 employees or $2 million. Patricia's phone rang instantly, and she went pale when she saw the caller ID. Meridian Industries, she said. They're probably calling about the payment schedule. Answer it, Harrison replied grimly. We need to begin the disclosure process now. As Patricia explained the internal fraud on the call, I felt something fundamental shift in my professional identity. I was no longer an employee struggling to survive impossible deadlines and manufactured failure. I had become someone capable of dismantling complex criminal conspiracies with nothing but persistence and analysis. The aftermath unfolded with brutal efficiency. Law enforcement arrived within the hour, armed with the evidence I'd compiled, while forensic accountants flooded the systems, uncovering even more than I'd initially found. The 7 terminated employees were contacted and offered not just reinstatement, but compensation for the damage done to their careers. The most satisfying moment came 3 hours later when I received a text from Jennifer Ashworth. She'd been contacted about the investigation and called to thank me personally, her voice breaking as she admitted she'd spent months believing she was a failure, wondering what was wrong with her. You gave me back my confidence, my professional identity, she said. I don't know how to thank you. 7 similar calls followed over the next 2 days. 7 people learning that their failures had been engineered by criminals, not personal inadequacy. The legal process moved with rare speed, the evidence so thorough and meticulously documented that Cornelius's attorneys advised immediate plea negotiations instead of trial. The offshore accounts I uncovered escalated the case to federal charges, transforming a corporate embezzlement scandal into an international financial crime investigation. Olia tried to plead ignorance, claiming she'd been manipulated by her husband, but the email trail exposed her as an equal partner in both planning and executing the fraud, and her attempts to replace terminated employees with family members proved clear premeditation and conspiracy. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Cornelius Thatcher receive a 15-year sentence for financial crimes, conspiracy, and racketeering, while Olia was sentenced to 12 years for her role. The stolen money was recovered and returned to the company, along with penalties that funded a major expansion. But the most meaningful change was personal. Harrison Blackthorne offered me Cornelius's former position as department head, with triple my previous salary and full autonomy, and the weekend meant to end my career instead elevated me beyond anything I'd imagined. The 7 former employees received substantial settlements and new opportunities, either returning in senior roles or moving on stronger elsewhere. Jennifer Ashworth was promoted to senior analyst, Bradley Quinton became our new client relations director, and all of us learned the critical difference between genuine failure and manufactured destruction. Real challenges create growth and learning, while artificial failures designed to serve someone else's criminal agenda create only psychological harm and self-doubt. Looking back, Cornelius's greatest mistake wasn't just the embezzlement or the fraud, but believing intelligent, capable people would accept failure without questioning the conditions that produced it. He relied on desperation overriding analysis, on victims internalizing blame instead of examining patterns, and instead he encountered someone who responded to impossible deadlines not with panic, but with curiosity. The assignment meant to professionally execute me became the foundation for exposing the most elaborate corporate fraud scheme in our state's history, and the presentation format meant for my humiliation became the instrument of his destruction. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't an elaborate plan, but refusing to accept injustice as inevitable and using clear thinking to understand why it exists. Today, I run the department Cornelius once controlled, installing systems that protect employees from the abuse he engineered. Every impossible deadline questioned, every sudden performance issue investigated, every termination reviewed. Most importantly, I've learned to trust that when something feels fundamentally wrong at work, investigation usually reveals why. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a workplace situation designed to make you fail? Did you investigate it or internalize the blame? And if this story revealed red flags you might have missed, like the video, share it, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, because more stories are coming about turning professional disasters into unexpected victories, and you won't want to miss what happens when people choose to fight back against systematic injustice instead of accepting it.